from Hollywood, I'm Martin Grove, welcoming you to our Screendollars podcast, Box Office Autopsy. Right now, we'll look at the movie marketplace and analyze how things are going and where they're going, sharing some opinions from my perspective after decades of talking about Hollywood on CNN Entertainment Tonight and as a Hollywood Reporter columnist. Everyone knew this weekend would be less inviting than last weekend, which at least had an overperforming aneme dragon to pump up the box office. This weekend, moviegoers really had little to choose from, with only two low-profile wide openings, Sony and Screen Gems' PG-13 horror thriller The Invitation and the R-rated romantic fantasy drama 3,000 Years of Longing from United Artists releasing MGM and Film Nation. Early media guesstimates saw a close race between them for first place, but that never came close to happening. Invitation's underperforming victory is hardly something to celebrate, as it tops this summer's lowest grossing weekend. As for Longing, it barely made the top 10. On today's Box Office Autopsy, which happily starts our second podcasting year, we'll look into those openings and we'll look ahead to try to find some new blood that's not a horror film. We'll also focus on recent release schedule changes that turned one film into a streaming original, made another movie a day-and-date opening, and pushed a superhero film from this Christmas to next March. Later, we'll turn our Oscar Outlook spotlight on the Golden Globes, which just made new headlines you may have missed in the New York Post. But we start today with the latest horror to walk down theater aisles. Originally titled The Bride, it's now The Invitation. This quick scene will help you decide if you want to party at the multiplexes.
Has he been like this a lot? So agitated?
Sometimes.
Well, I'm glad he has you. It comforts me.
I know he wants the best for you, too.
I'm glad you're here, Kira.
I think it's important.
Can I ask you something? How has he been handling things? He can be self-destructive.
I think he's doing the best he can.
The Invitation opened to a deadly $7 million at 3,114 theaters, but that's all it took to be number one this weekend. That was a far cry from the media buzz for a $10 to $12 million opening. Exhibitors were even more off base with 12 to 14. It reportedly only cost $10 million to produce, so Sony will come out fine. As for exhibitors, well, that's another story, isn't it? Younger women were the only demo showing any enthusiasm on the tracking, but that wasn't enough to make a difference. Critics hate it, with 26% on Rotten Tomatoes, and audiences are a grim 54% for this vampire tale where a young woman, Natalie Emmanuel, is swept off her feet romantically only to discover a gothic conspiracy is underway. Of course, Invitation looks good compared to 3,000 Years of Longing, which also underperformed, opening 7th to just $2.9 million at 2,436 theaters. The media was looking for 10 to 12 million, after starting out projecting 12 to 15 million. Exhibitors only expected 5 to 7 million, but they were also way wrong. Critics are just okay at 70% on RT, and audiences are about the same with 73%. Longing reportedly cost a hefty $60 million to produce. Directed by George Miller, who made Mad Max Fury Road, it's about a scholar, Tilda Swinton, visiting Istanbul and encountering a djinn, Idris Elba, who offers her 3 wishes in exchange for his freedom. One of those wishes should have been for a better opening than this. Thanks to the 2 newcomers, the weekend box office was just $52.7 million per ComScore, down about 35% from the prior weekend and less than any weekend this summer. ComScore also reports that it's down about 17% from the comparable weekend in 2021 when the pandemic was raging. As anticipated, last weekend's overperforming winner, Crunchyroll's anime Dragon Ball Superhero, fell apart in weekend 2, plunging 78% to $4.6 million at 3,100 theaters, with a domestic cume of $30.8 million. This was no surprise, since anime movies are typically front-loaded, just like horror films are. Anime's core audience is younger men. They're all there opening weekend, and since no other demos care, there's nowhere to grow in weekend 2. Moviegoers, however, did have somewhere else to go to see a new movie this weekend. If they're Amazon Prime subscribers, they could stay home and stream the new Sylvester Stallone superhero action drama Samaritan from United Artists Releasing and MGM, which Amazon now owns. Had Amazon given the PG-13 Samaritan a theatrical-only launch, it would have been a safe bet to open number 1 this weekend, which would have set it up nicely as a high-profile new Stallone franchise to drive subscribers to Amazon Prime Video. Although critics hate it with 37% on RT, audiences are applauding it with 80%. To set the stage, 13-year-old Sam Cleary suspects his mysterious and reclusive neighbor, Stallone, is actually a legend hiding in plain sight. 20 years ago, Granite City's super-powered vigilante, Samaritan, was reported dead after a fiery warehouse battle with his rival, Nemesis. It's believed that Samaritan perished in that fire, but some people think he could still be alive. With crime on the rise and Granite City on the brink of chaos, Sam's mission is to coax his neighbor out of hiding to save the city from ruin. This quick scene will help you decide if it's a good Samaritan.
Really? Fly.
Hey! Hey! Did you just do that? You threw that Batman through the wall. How'd you do that?
Well, little girl, you didn't see anything. See, that hole was already there. That's an optical illusion.
No. What I saw was you threw that.
You actually
Hey, old
didn't
man.
see it.
Try this. Come on.
Looking ahead definitely isn't as much fun as it was back in May and June when studios were busy planting tentpoles at the box office beach. Next weekend is Labor Day, the last gasp of summer for millions of moviegoers. It's typically not a great box office weekend because people would rather be hanging out at the beach or partying outdoors, weather permitting. But lightning can strike at the multiplexes, as it did last September 3rd when Disney and Marvel opened Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings to $94.7 million for the four-day holiday weekend, a clear indication at the time that the box office recovery was really underway. This time around, there's no new wide release to tempt people to leave their seaside or poolside parties. Marvel fans may want to see last December's Spider-Man No Way Home one more time, and Steven Spielberg's original summer blockbuster Jaws from 1975 may do some business because now it's in IMAX, but there's nothing new to get moviegoers excited. It won't be until midsummer that there's anything interesting to talk about. That would be Searchlight Pictures' PG-13 comedy mystery, See How They Run, from first-time featured director Tom George, opening in limited release September 16th. The story, per Searchlight, takes place in 1950s London in the theater district, the West End, where plans for a movie version of a hit play come to an abrupt halt when a key crew member is murdered. World-weary Inspector Stoppard, Sam Rockwell, and over-eager rookie constable stalker, Saoirse Ronan, are on the case, finding themselves in a puzzling whodunit within the glamorously sordid theater underground, investigating a mysterious homicide at their own peril. Here's a sneak peek to help you decide if the play's the thing.
Victim's name is Leo Kopernik, sir. Seems he was killed in the costume store. And then he was deposited here. Staged, so to speak. Sorry, sir. How much longer do you intend to hold us all hostage?
Or is that the idea? Gather all the suspects and interrogate each of us in turn until the mystery's solved?
Marvin Cocker-Norris, overrated playwright.
Celebrated playwright?
Oh, I'm so sorry, sir. I can't read my own handwriting.
There was an incident.
I'll kill you.
It's as good as a confession.
Let's not jump to conclusions, Constable.
What do we have here? Working late, huh?
He killed Kopernik to hush up the affair. Case closed. I'm doing it again, aren't I, sir? Jumping to conclusions.
Yeah, a little bit.
You've never heard of Richard Attenborough.
A real-life detective.
I understand that you came to blows the night in question.
It was me, Inspector.
I arrest you for the murder of Leo Kopernik.
We have a serial killer on the loose.
Please, stand back!
He keeps the key! Under the mat.
We are no longer merely suspects. We are also potential victims.
So what did he do that made you suspicious?
It wasn't so much what he did, it was more the way he did it.
How'd he do it?
Sort of suspiciously.
Right.
September will end with, you guessed it, another original horror film, Paramount's Smile, which opens wide September 30th. It's the story of a doctor who witnesses a bizarre traumatic incident with a patient and then begins to experience her own frightening occurrences that she can't explain. This quick scene will tell you if you want to see it or skip it.
What is it you like to talk about?
My patient. Hi. I know you're nervous. I just want to have a chat.
I'm seeing something no one else can see except for me. It's smiling at me. Oh my God!
When you look at late summer and early to mid-fall schedules, it's clear that after 6 months of brilliant box office biz, the movie gods have now turned off the sizzle. It's not that there just wasn't any good product to release during the late summer, it's that Hollywood's still trying to have it both ways when it comes to feeding the streaming beast that Wall Street has promoted as moviegoing's future. There was a real need for a strong family film in August, and exhibitors lost out big time when Paramount moved producer Jerry Bruckheimer's PG action-adventure comedy Secret headquarters to Paramount Plus. Secret, starring Owen Wilson, would have hit theaters August 5th, when it would only have been up against Universal's Easter Sunday, since Sony's Bullet Train was then opening July 29th. As things turned out, Secret, a perfect father-son movie about a superhero's underground hideaway, started streaming August 12th on Paramount Plus. It now holds the record as that streamer's most-watched original movie during its first week. Universal's launching Halloween Ends October 14th, day and date on Peacock and in theaters, but that's not as damaging as the Secret switch. Last October, Universal day and dated Halloween Kills, and it's still open to a lively $49.4 million despite pandemic pressures. Meanwhile, Warner Bros. DC's Shazam! Fury of the Gods will be moving from December 21st to next March 17th to replace Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, which needs more post-production time and now won't surface until Christmas Day 2023. But thanks to Warner Bros. Discovery CEO David Zaslav, both of these tentpoles are staying theatrical-only releases, leaving at least some hope for a better theatrical future. And speaking of the future, it's time now for our Oscar Outlook focus on the awards front. The always interesting HFPA has been flying under Hollywood's media radar lately, but the New York Post just put it back in the headlines. The Post's analysis of why the group's Golden Globes might return to NBC next January suggests profit motives for some publicists and agents. The paper quotes what it calls an awards campaigner for a top streaming platform, who points out, quote, "I do make a bonus if our project wins. If the Globes go by the wayside, I could be out 30 grand a year," unquote. The Post adds that, quote, "finances are the main factor driving the Globe's possible return," unquote. It then quotes a talent agency pro as saying, quote, "For our purposes, it would help to have them back on the air. If your client wins, they get press, more money, we make more money, the project makes more money, it sets you up for Oscar and Emmy attention," unquote. Looking back at what led NBC to put the Globes on hiatus last year, the Post writes that besides diversity issues, quote, "the HFPA was accused of shady payments to members that could run afoul of the IRS. Past President Philip Burke was accused of racism and sexual assault, and celebrity publicists complained of shoddy behavior at actor junkets," unquote. NBC needs to act soon if it wants to air the 2023 Globes. The Post says an awards coordinator pointed out, quote, To get stars in a room and nomination dates set up, a date would have to be announced by late September at the latest, unquote. We'll keep our eyes wide open for whatever happens next. And that's it for today's podcast, starting our second year of Box Office Autopsy. We'll be back again next week to talk about Labor Day weekend ticket sales, and we'll fire up our Oscar Outlook spotlight to check out the latest awards action. Please join us again then, and thanks very much for listening. Time now for our film flashback look at what was happening in Hollywood right around now, way back then. Let's set today's time travel dial for August 31st, 2012. Oscar pundits say movies like Argo, with a Best Picture nomination but no directing nod, are films that directed themselves. In the case of Argo, which premiered August 31st, 2012 at the Telluride Film Festival, the director's branch snub of Ben Affleck remains one of Oscar's worst insults ever. Looking at Argo a decade after it hit theaters leaves no doubt that those who insisted at the time that it really was a director's movie were absolutely right. Argo, from Warner Brothers and Smokehouse Pictures, was Oscar's first Best Picture winner in 7 years to not also win for directing. The last one was Crash in 2006, but that was very different. Its director, Paul Haggis, who directed Red Hot, got a directing nom but lost. Affleck didn't even get into the race. That made Argo the first Best Picture winner in 23 years not to have had a directing nom. The previous one was Driving Miss Daisy, which won in 1990 and had 9 noms, but not for director Bruce Beresford, who directed Breaker Morant. Daisy differed from Argo in that it had lead acting nods for Morgan Freeman and for Jessica Tandy, who won. Argo didn't have a lead actress, but it did have a lead actor around whom the entire film revolved, Ben Affleck, who also produced with George Clooney and Grant Heslov. That made Argo Oscar's first Best Picture winner without a directing or lead acting nom since Grand Hotel won Best Picture in 1932. Argo did get 7 Academy noms and 1 for picture, adapted screenplay, and film editing. Media coverage at the time focused on Affleck's snub from the director's branch. No one knew why for certain, but a popular theory was that the branch was made up of Hollywood's top directors, who in those days were an older elite group. Affleck was best known then as an actor, although he'd made his directorial debut in 2007 with Gone Baby Gone. Those Oscar branchers were thought to have been offended by the idea that some young actor-director could just walk in and take home a directing Oscar. Other major awards groups applauded Affleck for Best Directing, including BAFTA, Critics' Choice Awards, Golden Globes, and Directors Guild of America. Articles at the time explained that the DGA membership, which included TV directors, was broader and younger than the director's branch. Despite much speculation, no one knows to this day why the Academy branch didn't at least nominate Affleck. If Affleck was hurt by the director's snub, he didn't say so. He actually joked that it really didn't bother him since he also hadn't been nominated by his colleagues in the actors branch. that's it for today's podcast. Thanks for listening. We'll be back with another box office autopsy next week. In Hollywood for Screendollars, I'm Martin Grove.